So the first thing I did was boil the wood for the enclosure. The whole point of this step is to kill any pests or hitchhikers. My pot's a little small, but if you are doing this at home, an oven works, so just keep that in mind. Now what I'm trying to do is find the best way to prop up this branch before I secure it in place. Cheese nippies aren't really working, paper towel's not working either, so I basically just ended up hanging it from the front glass with a piece of duct tape. So at this point everything's secure and I'm ready to start the expanding foam. This is basically the foundation for the whole build, so it's a super important step. I'm using Great Stuff expanding foam, gaps and cracks, I think it's called. It's for outdoor ponds, so it's totally safe for any animal. This is an expired breakfast drink, and I need the lid to stick into the expanding foam. The next step is a really tedious one, but it's very, very important. You basically have to scrape away all the shiny parts of the expanding foam. You have to do this because the silicone that we'll be using in the next step does not stick well to these shiny surfaces. It has to be matte. For this, I'm just using a razor scraper. And for the background, we're going to be using cocoa fiber. This corrupted piece of footage is me smashing apart a log. We're going to need these smaller pieces for the next step. Here I'm using my gloves as a paintbrush because I don't have a caulk gun for the silicone. All I'm really doing is pressing the cocoa fiber into the background. And now for those wood pieces I was smashing apart. I'm doing this because I heard that the animal that's moving in here has a hard time sticking to straight cocoa fiber, so these will basically act as little footholds. Now it's time to let it cure overnight. The next day I found out I made a horrible mistake. When the expanding foam was curing, it basically peeled away from the glass, and to prevent this I could have cut holes in the expanding foam to let the air out. I also could have put some beads of silicone before the expanding foam. Didn't do that, so it's time to fix it. So what I basically did was just remove the entire background, and then I put some beads of silicone on the back glass and then let it cure overnight. I think it should be fine. So it's now the next day and I'm just starting off by scraping off some of the extra silicone. So the first step for the substrate is to use some sort of rocky false bottom. And the whole point of this is just so that when you water the plants, if that basin does become filled with water and stagnant and it mixes with your soil, it can lead to root rot in a lot of your plants. But for this particular tank, I'm not that concerned. This whole bottom panel is designed to be at a slight angle, so the water drains down to a gutter in the front and it can be drained through a little hose in the back.
I wasn't sure that it was.
So to find plants for this, I actually went to one of those kinda upscale plant stores. They're very, very helpful, but it's also super expensive. So I actually just ended up going to the bodega. And the substrate is from the Bio Dude. It's a 50-50 blend of his Terra Fauna and sphagnum moss. Now, it's time to start planting. The first thing I'm doing is removing all the soil and rinsing off the roots. If there are any pests or hitchhikers, this is where they'll likely be hiding. To be honest, I could have done a better job, but I think it should be fine. I know for sure I want to use this snake plant on the right side. The hope is that it'll kind of grow up and around this log and give the animal plenty of cover. And then the left side will be a little bit more open. I need quick access to the food bowl, and honestly I just like the contrast between having tall plants on one side and this nice slope down to the shorter end. I'm also going to try poking some of the plants into the expanding foam. I think this should work with the bromeliad, but I'm not sure if the pothos are going to take. Check below for an update and I'll let you know how that goes. At this point we're moving towards the bioactive portion of the setup. The first thing I'm doing is adding a layer of leaf litter. This is basically so the isopods have cover but also a food source. I started out with a culture of dwarf white isopods. These guys are great because they're going to be eating the poop from the animal, some of the spilled food, and then like I said, some of the decomposing plant matter. While I waited for springtails to come back in stock, I did a little bit of rearranging in the tank. Springtails are super important for a bioactive setup because their only job is to eat mold, and we're going to be misting this tank every day. I also picked up a culture of orange isopods. I like these guys a lot. They're a little bit less shy and they're a lot bigger. The only thing left to do now is just sit back and let the tank mature. I hope this video was somewhat helpful. Please learn from the mistakes that I made. The next video will actually be adding the animal to the enclosure, so keep an eye out and we'll see you soon.